Hello, this is Roger Frank Molina. I'm here in Texas, the United States, but I also live in Paris, France. I'm very pleased to present to you a talk, Design Intelligence in Emergent Surrealities. So I'm just going to keep going here and mention the work of my colleague Samantha Bennett, who's a colleague at Stanford University. She's been promoting recently the idea of meta risk, um, where really, it's sort of an implied critique that experts like simple causalities, A causes B. If you do this, this will stop happening. But we know in the real world, complex systems can interrelate. A causes B if C happened before, D has never happened, E happens somewhere else and affects the local situation. Um, but also, the argument about meta risk is that negative effects can lead to desirable consequences. So normally we think we want to solve a problem, but maybe we should augment certain problems. Now, this is a bit of a provocation, but right now, one of the things that we're very upset about is the explosion of volume of microplastics in the environment, which is going to lead to a decrease in human life scale, and it will destroy many species. But ironically, this could help climate change and stabilize the climate. So I'm not saying this is a good solution, but it might be a side effect of some causalities. And so the focus really is what I've been working on over the past few months, which is the phenomenon of emergence, which many of you will have definitions for. There are many definitions. But the point here is that we now have billions of human beings on the planet, billions of digital devices interconnected with each other through the internet and other ways at near the speed of light. This is a new phenomenon that has not existed in human history. As a result, in complex systems, and I just show on the right a termite colony in South Africa, where thousands of insects collaborate to create these different structures, and that are able to avoid being destroyed during a rainstorm. So collective behaviors may emerge. Sometimes it's an increase in phenomena, larger phenomena. Sometimes it's decreases, something that used to be very common just stops happening. Sometimes things that used to change all the time become very stable. And so we need to change the way, I think, that we design the world we live in, the products we use, but also the very concept of intelligence, I think, needs to be rethought. Um, Complexities in complex systems. People have been talking about this for 2 or 3 centuries now. Obviously, algorithms have been worked on since the 19th century. AI began in the 1940s, but we are very interested in different types of complexities. So here I just want to mention physical. The easy analogy is earthquakes, chemical complexities, poisons, biological complexities. For instance, in the human system, when your autoimmune system collapses, every germ that enters your body might make you sick. That's called sepsis. Psychological, obviously, there's a lot of work on social media and how that's enabled certain emergent phenomena. Social emergence, politics, and so on. But I think here relevant is really pandemics, combinations of all of the above. So the effect of the pandemic a few years ago was not just biological and human health. It affected political systems, social systems. It was really unanticipated how a global pandemic would cause such a shock to the system that it's not settling back into the same place. Now, I know a lot of people have written about this, but our hope is to focus in on a few areas in the coming years. Now, there, the problem of focus is that human beings tend to focus on scales that are similar to their own. So, emergent phenomena in the universe happen at all scales, from macro to micro. But the telescope and the microscope were only invented in modern societies in the last few hundred years. Well, so what? If you're a student in a PhD program at a university, you want to do a PhD within 5, 6, 7 years. So you're not going to study something that takes 600 years to understand. Well, some of the problems just are not compatible with the timescale of human institutions. Um, the human focus of problems of human scales has been written about extensively by, among others, um, Guadagno, who's on the United Nations Climate Change Commission, and Nina Zegledy. I show, and I'm sorry it's illegible, their diagram, but the key thing is the circle in the middle is the areas that humans tend to study because they're relevant to human lifetimes and physical sizes. If something is going to take 1 million years to do, we're not going to spend much time studying it. And as an astrophysicist myself, I'm particularly aware that we tend to study materials that are made of the same things as we are made of, even though 80% of the universe is made of totally different kinds of matter. So maybe there are emergent phenomena that are made of neutrinos, gravitons, all kinds of other matter that human beings are not made of, but that affect the way that things will happen on our planet. Um, the All of this discussion has led us, a team of us, in the last few months rather, to set up a new off center for emergent studies. We call it an off center because often in a complex system, change doesn't occur in the middle or the top. It happens on the edge or diagonally or whatever. Um, we are relying a lot on the science of team science, which was developed 20 years ago by the United States National Institutes of Health, and it was set up to get researchers, medical personnel, hospital administrators, government lawyers, insurance company people to collaborate to solve a problem. And they discovered, surprise, surprise, that people who are all of the same type tend to think alike, just like people in an orchestra play the same kind of music, but they're unlikely to come up with the really important ideas needed to solve a problem. As part of this, we intentionally try to be multi-generational. We have people who are over 80 and under 20. We try to be multicultural. We have people from different continents on the earth, and we try to be multidisciplinary, geologists, poets, computers. I'm an astrophysicist and a publisher. Um, and as I'll mention next, we're working with a judge and lawyer. Now, it's so much easier to collaborate with people who work like you, think like you, use the same tools that you do, but then you may not discover the things that are needed to solve the problem. An example of an area that I've been working on with a judge, a lawyer, is Judge John Marshall here in Texas. He sends people to jail, and he's been explaining now for several years how the legal systems in all of our countries on the planet are badly designed for the new situation. He calls it techno evidence. Almost no humans are sent to jail based on evidence just provided by humans. It's provided by machines. Now, it was pretty easy to integrate photography into the legal system, but it's now becoming more and more difficult. Right now, a lot of lawyers no longer read evidence, they just have the AI summarize it. And so his argument is that it's not just modifications to the law, iterative design, that is really going to address the changing situation. We need to stand back, look at the purpose of a legal system, and really rethink it from bottom up to side, given now that we're entering an era where most of the evidence that sends humans to jails is provided by robots and AI and other sophisticated technologies that humans have generated. Um, and here we like to rely on what's called transition design, which Terry Irwin at Carnegie Mellon developed over 20 years ago, where sometimes, yeah, redesigning a bottle with new materials from glass to plastics works very well. But sometimes when the context changes fundamentally, you have to rethink what a bottle's purpose is, and maybe you end up with something with a totally different shape that is you don't pick up with your hands, but with a robot or whatever. And so, right now, um, the argument that Judge Marshall has in this article that we're about to publish is that the law needs to be really use intelligent design methods and just step out of the box. Another example I just wanted to bring up is one that we've already published the article about, and it's not new in itself, but we just want to say that we are drawing slightly different conclusions. So we know that there's a changing in age demographics on this planet. There's been millions of articles written about it over the last 100 years. And I think we underestimate some of the changes that are about to occur in the next 50 years. A really easy example is here in Texas, the average number of children in married families is down to 1.94 and declining every year. And the pandemic led to a rapid decrease in the number of children that families had. Now, I'm not saying the pandemic caused it, but it triggered a change in thinking. It used to be in Texas that families had 5, 6, 7 children. That's just very, very rare now. The corollary is the number of adults in Texas who never have children is now over 30%. And again, the pandemic triggered a lot of people deciding not to have children at all during their lifetimes. So this is then combined with something that we've known has been going on for a long time, which is the increase in human longevity, the so-called Mediterranean diet, what's been going on in Japan and China with the increasing number of older people. But we think we're entering a different situation now. And the pandemic, again, triggered a lot of people learning how to work online. And so now if you're 80 years old or 90 years old and you can't walk, you can still do phone calls and collaborations online, write articles together online. And we like to call this a new republic of letters. In the Middle Ages, before universities existed, thinking people started writing letters to each other on paper with ink pens, of course. And horses and carriages had to carry the post. If you go to some of the famous people of the time, like the French philosopher Voltaire, you'll find 10, 20,000 letters in their archives. And that led to so many changes in society, including, of course, the invention of universities. But more than that, it stimulated the change from democracy, from royalty to democracy, and so on. So I think perhaps we're entering a new period, an emergent period, where it's not just an aging population and changing demographics, it's that the emerging technologies make it possible for people with very different motivations to do a lot of work. And retired people often just want enough money to pay the bills. They don't want to be tourists anymore. but they would like to spend working time online, thinking, coming up with new ideas, and so on. So maybe we're seeing the emergence. And let me just mention here, it's not in the PowerPoint, that I'm a part of a group called a Cyber Village, CIBER Village. And we're trying to design software to create positive feedback groups among a group of, say, 300 people. And it's difficult because most of the software systems we have reinforce negative behaviors rather than positive behaviors. But we're really working on this, and you'll hear more about it when we present the work in Bogota, Colombia next summer. So let me, Jen, just finalize this presentation. The last project I want to mention is called Fred the Heretic. It's about the work of Fred Turner, a poet and science fiction writer. And it's AI generated art, so it sounds pretty boring and routine, but it's the database is only the work that Fred Turner has written over the last 60 years of his life. He's 80 years, so it's actually maybe 70 years worth of his writing. But the thing we've discovered is the most important thing that affects his writing is his private life. He's been married to the same woman for 60 years now. The word marriage and love means something totally different to 99% of all people. And that influences what he writes about, how he writes it. So does AI have a private life? Should it? A few months ago, there was an electricity problem in Dallas, and all our databases went down and got shaken up. Does the AI really keep track of which data might be difficult to trust? Not really. And so, should we make sure that AI has a private life that affects how it answers the questions? So the Fred the Heretic software generates poetry and science fiction based on prompts. And unfortunately, the most interesting thing we've discovered is the questions the humans ask the AI, if you put them all together, are just as or more interesting than the answers the AI provides. So why do people ask certain questions and not other questions? Just to conclude, my son Xavier works at Disney in Los Angeles. His job title is AI Imagineer. The corporate narrative is, let's let AI do all the creative work. It's just recombining the data already in the database. The humans will be free to focus on using their imagination. What matters most about the work of Jules Verne, the science fiction writer, was his private life, not his public life. So I'm just going to end there. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I've been talking too quickly for the translator. Thank you.